Welcome to the Voices of the Goddess podcast. We believe that there is a goddess inside each and every one of us. When we use our voice to share that goddess, we support and uplift each other. Join us each week as we interview women to receive the message of their goddess within. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses they were meant to be. I'm your co-host, Julietta, also known as the Magical PT, coming to you from sunny Fort Lauderdale. And here I have my own private PT practice where I help people find balance in their body, mind, and spirit. And when I'm not working with patients, I also create healing art and jewelry with crystals and painting and making malas. And I'm divorced. I'm a cat mom and a Midwesterner who's been in Florida forever, it feels like. And as the summer is approaching, all I can say is, I'm melting.
It's starting to get hot. But okay, that's the first time I've heard you say in your introduction, I'm divorced.
You know what? I'm only saying it because you always talk about being married and having kids.
Yeah, it's part of my little, So
well, it might be that there's a lot of divorced women out there. And so it just so y'all know, I'm with you there.
Yeah. Listen, my mom I was that close at one point. So yeah, I get it. All right. So my name is Allison Mancini. I'm excited to be here. And I am here in South Florida, not too far from Julietta, originally a Midwest girl. I grew up in Michigan. So when people ask where home is, I say Michigan, even though I've been here longer. Just something about that being a Midwest girl. It never goes away. And I am married for 28 years. I have 2 adult kids, a 25-year-old son and a 22-year-old daughter. I am human resources director for a company called The Goal Digger Girl. It's GOAL. And I am also a functional nutritionist. And my passion and goal is to help women be the best that they can be by supporting them through what they eat, through their overall wellness, their mindset. And I think that's why Julietta and I work so well together. She takes care of their body, mind, and soul. And I fill in the nutrition, and we just all are happy together. So there you go. And I'm excited to be here. Hanging out with you.
It's always good hanging out with you.
Yeah.
You want to tell everybody about our sponsor for
this one? Look, this is so beautiful. I know. I between each episode, I'm like, I gotta go get my mug, and I wasn't getting it because it's been a busy day already. I've already had a few cups of coffee, so the next one's gonna be tea now. So our sponsor, she is incredible. Our sponsor for the month of April is Alicia Botang Designs. She is a celebrity cup designer, and Alicia is a mother of 4, a wife, and passionate coffee lover. Alicia is a former wedding planner and has always been an exceptional creative individual. She has turned an ordinary coffee cup into an extraordinary, dazzling, and empowering vessel that speaks volumes to women of all colors all over the world. Alicia's cups, and Alicia has been seen on the Today Show with Huda and Jenna. I'm like, I love that. I love that she's been on that. And Reader's Digest, Forbes, Food Network, ABC, Fox, and MSN, Your California Life, Gift Shop Magazine, Sheen Magazine, and Lifestyle Magazine. And if you want to check out more on Alicia's mugs, her cups, she's got pretty much any design you can think of. Go to her website and check it out. I got first introduced to her through you, Julietta, and she was a guest on our show months ago. And after she was a guest, it was before Christmas. And I'm like, oh, that would be great. I like gift ideas. I got on her website. I couldn't make this. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many. I want them all. Like, they're so incredible. And so
they do make great gifts. And what I'm impressed, I hadn't been on in a while. And then you go and you check out, she constantly has new designs, and they're great. And whatever you're drinking in your coffee cup, whether it's coffee, tea, water, or who knows what else, It does. It tastes more delicious when it's in such a beautiful
It's
cup.
beautiful. I know. Yeah. And so she made us our Voices of the Goddess mugs. We love them. They're beautiful. All right. So real quickly, let's talk. So my last few clients, I've been having interesting conversations. And I bring this up because for me personally, I know that this is how I used to be. And as a mom, I was like this with my mom. So one of the things that and I don't know if this is just a American thing, I'm not really sure. Well, I think it's probably people in Europe do the same thing, but we have this thing about in the morning eating what I would call the standard quote unquote breakfast foods which tend to be starchy, high carb, really, really fast burning, spike our blood sugars and then leave us hanging. And we're like, but I'm eating healthy. I'm eating a whole grain muffin, or I'm eating a whole grain bagel, and I'm like, oh, like I just met with a client. And I'm like, let's think outside of the box on how we can get some other things into your morning. And the reason I want to bring it up is if we have moms out there that are listening, your kids get up in the morning and they have this big old plate of waffles or pancakes. And I'm saying this because this is what I used to do. Plate of waffles, Eggo waffles, a bagel with cream cheese, or a muffin on the way to school. They run out the door, they go to school. And then for 6 years, I worked as a teacher's assistant. So this is what you saw all the time. Kids come into school, they're bouncing off the walls, they're all over the place, doing all their stuff. And then like an hour or two later, they're like heads down on the desk, flat out cold, because they've now crashed, right? So how do you solve that crash? All you have to do is add a little bit of protein or a good fat into their morning breakfast or into your morning breakfast. And what does that look like? It can be as simple as, if you're like my kids, because they were kind of picky, I would make them smoothies in the morning and I would like dump stuff in there they didn't even know was there, like chia seeds, avocados, flax seeds, because they didn't know it was in there. They couldn't taste it. And it just helps keep your blood sugar levels. And so I was working with this client recently, and she's in her 30s and she's been doing the, bagel or muffin in the morning. And I'm like, let's look at, because she said to me, she's like, I get so tired late morning and I don't have a lot of energy. And I'm like, well, let's look at what you're eating and how can we kind of pump that up a little bit? So if you're someone that doesn't eat, animal proteins, there's plant proteins out there. There's plenty of them. And look at other things, other ways that you can get in some good fats, some good antioxidants into your mornings. Because honestly, when you're doing that bagel and muffin, you're setting yourself up for like, just to go meh, like that. And it's just not good for you. And the older we get, I think that's one of the biggest things. The more and more I work with clients and I run into them, and the older that they are getting and we are getting, the numbers of times I hear pre-diabetes and diabetes is like astounding to me. And listen, that form of diabetes as you get in your old age is typically diet and lifestyle related. So you can control that. And a little side tip, if you are dealing with blood sugar level issues, and I think I've told you this before, Julietta, a really, really easy way to help that out is sprinkle a little bit of cinnamon into your coffee, tea, or in a smoothie. Cinnamon has notoriously been known forever to be a really good balancer of blood sugar. So
awesome tips.
Yeah.
You have to tell me, because I'm a smoothie breakfast person.
I am too. Yeah.
But when you were talking, I was really thinking I probably need to be putting something more fat and protein in there, because it's all just fruit and veggie. So
yeah, I can help you with that.
All right. Awesome.
Okay.
Should we bring on our guest?
Yes, let's do it. I love it.
Yes.
Hello, Dr. Rosenberg. How are you?
Okay. How are you?
We're great. Thank you. So please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do.
Sure. And thanks for having me. I'm a clinical psychologist and have had a psychotherapy and executive coaching practice for many years. I teach sometimes. I write psychology textbooks. If you took intro psych, you may have used my textbook, or abnormal psychology. And most recently, I started a company called Live in Their World that uses, in part, virtual reality to address issues of bias and incivility in the workplace.
Wow. I think I need to have a conversation with you in my human resources director position. Holy cow.
You've got a lot going on.
I do. I like learning new things. So,
yeah.
And you keep the old learning. So that's one of the fun things about being a psychologist.
You don't look old enough, though, to have written my college text, but I did. In physical therapy, we do have to take quite a bit of psychology classes because when you're dealing with patients,
Sure,
you know that it's going to come up. But
of course.
that was a long time ago. Actually, I really enjoyed my psych classes back then, and except for my statistics, I had to do through the psych program, and that wasn't as fun for me, but I made it through.
My daughter, actually, she's getting her degree in exercise physiology, and psych was a big class. She really loved it. She would like call me up after class. She's like, "Mom, did you know?" Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, "Yeah, that's really cool. Like, that's cool. That's good. You're taking it in. That's good.
That's great.
Yeah, it is.
It's handy to know about people.
A little bit, just a little bit, just a little bit, tiny.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Well, let's dive into our questions. So our first one is, what is one book that you wish every goddess would read and why?
So it's an old book. It's called The Beauty Myth by Naomi Wolf. It was, I believe, her undergraduate thesis. It was a very long time ago. And I should say parenthetically that one of my specialties in my clinical practice as a psychotherapist is treating people with eating disorders.
Oh.
And the reason that I really like the Beauty Myth book is I actually encourage it for people to get angry about the inequality in the focus on women's appearance and the ways that really it deforms us. And I mean, unfortunately, men are catching up. That's not a great solution. That's not the solution I would have wished for.
Mm-hmm.
But I use it to make people angry instead of kind of viewing themselves, in what we call objectified way,
Mm-hmm.
And focusing on their appearance is to get mad that the culture promotes that and that there are alternatives. So that's the book I'd recommend.
It's called The Beauty Myth?
The Beauty Myth.
I like that.
Yeah. And
now I have
at least 20 years old.
Yeah, I have family members that are dealing with eating disorders, and I have a 22-year-old daughter, and that they're extremely impressionable, and the social media and how they have to, it's just, my son actually said it to me one time, and he's 25. This was back when he was in high school. He's like, "Mom," he's like, "when you were a kid, you had to keep up with your neighbors and the kids you went to school with." He's like, "We have to try to keep up with the entire world because that's what we're seeing." And I'm like, that's a gut punch. Holy cow. Yeah.
It's really awful.
It's really awful for them, and I think that we forget that as parents that yes, they're extremely resilient, but they are also young and don't have all the knowledge necessarily. So that's an interesting book. I'll have to look into that.
Yeah. I mean, it's got facts and figures in it, but
it's okay.
And they're there to make people angry.
Yeah.
It's older. The statistics aren't going to be substantively different. If anything, they're likely to be worse.
Probably.
So, yeah.
I'm a learner, so I like to learn. I like constantly consuming. If you could see the pile of books sitting next to me on my desk that I say I'm going to read like soon, but there's like 20 of them. Like constantly. So anyways, on to our next question. Yeah. So if you were to pick your favorite self-care practice, what would it be and how does it support you?
Diaphragmatic breathing. It doesn't have to be meditation. It's really just the breathing part. Mm-hmm. And it supports me because it fakes out my brain. I'm relaxed when I'm not. That's I can go into the whole cascade. I'm sure your listeners have probably heard about this, but the ways that it works to lower your baseline level of arousal, if you will, or think of it that way, or anxiety. And then you can also just use it as you feel stressed or anxious or had too much coffee. So that's my go-to self-care. It could be for a few breaths. It could be for a few minutes. It could be when I'm trying to go to sleep and having a hard time falling asleep. It's my go-to tool.
I love that.
It's a great tool. And I'm also happy to see, as a physical therapist, so many people are breathing poorly. They're not breathing diaphragmatically. I would say, I think some of it came from, the whole fitness trends starting back in the 80s where, everybody wanted a flat stomach and everybody was sucking their stomachs in all the time. And it's not normal for us to walk around sucking in our stomachs. To really truly get a good breath, the diaphragm needs to be able to come down into your abdominal cavity. And if you're holding your stomach in, it can't. So everybody's turned into these chest breathers. So it's something that, I've worked on with clients for 30 years, but I'm seeing now out there a lot of people talking about breath work, which is some of it's really complex and whatnot, but just getting people tuned in to breathing. I mean, it's the most vital thing that we have to life. So take some good breaths.
Right. It's really a miracle. I don't want to oversell it, but I think just being aware when knowing how to do it, the mechanics of it take a while to learn if you've never done it before. That's been my experience with clients and with patients. But then once you know how to do it, it's really, if you just start thinking stress breathing, it really, you make that link. When I'm stressed, I need to focus on my breathing, and I know how to do it, so I can do it while I'm talking to people or whatever. It really can be almost miraculous.
Yeah, I realized years ago that, I think it was my husband actually pointed out to me that I hold my breath when I'm stressed out.
Yeah.
Like I just don't breathe. I didn't even know I was doing it. And I'm sure I had been doing it for God knows how long. And once I realized it, now I'm very, very conscious of it. Like I know when I'm starting to get stressed out, I have to stop and pay attention to my breathing, because it definitely, I hold my breath. It's not good. It's not good. It's just not good. Bad habit. Bad coping mechanism. We'll put it that way. I'm sure. Yeah.
All right. Our next question is, because we all have days that are difficult to show up, and but we need to get things done. So how do you rise up to get through one of those kind of days?
It depends on why I'm not otherwise rising up. Caffeine helps if it's that's just, it just really depends, right? If it's for me, if it's like a people thing, becoming engaged with people takes care of itself. It takes me out of myself and whatever it is that's having me have a hard time rising up. When I'm procrastinating writing or something, that's harder. Deadlines help. And also an honest self-assessment about what I can and can't do in a given time. So, I mean, if there's a deadline, the adrenaline of the deadline typically works. If I had planned to do something, if there's no deadline urgently, and it's not about people, and I'm having a hard time doing it, it's just like, if I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to do it tomorrow, just being honest with myself and do something else that's more meaningful, or crosses something off a list. So it really is that honest self-assessment. I can either get engaged or don't, sort of, versus sit there, for a long time hoping to get engaged.
Yeah, I think it's important too, I don't know why it's hard for us sometimes to give ourselves permission to just have a day that we don't push through the things that we don't want to do. Yes, when there's a deadline and you have to, that's one thing, but I feel like we've been so programmed to just push through things, and it's okay sometimes to be gentle with ourselves and
right.
give ourselves a break.
That is all true. For me, it's I wouldn't formulate it that way. It's really more, we all have tons of things we need to do, and depending on our emotional state or mood, or arousal level. Some things are easier than others. And so for me, it's really, that's the honest self-assessment. I mean, I would much rather have a planned mental health day if I were to take a mental health day than a day that's like, I don't feel, or like it's not a whole day that I would do that unless I was really sick. But it's really more what has to be done. What are the time priorities? What has to be done, and what's would be nice to do, and then what can I do? What matches where I'm at? And I think that's what you're really ultimately saying is when it's a mismatch between sort of what you need to show up to do or what you want to show up to do and where you are showing up, and then how do you deal with that?
Great way of putting it. And you know what it makes me think of? It makes me think of like our day. So when we do our podcast interview days, we do 4 interviews back to back. We batch record for the whole month.
Sure.
And there are some mornings where I'm like, oh, this is a rough morning. But I know, okay, the podcast interviews, they have to get done. Like I've got to show up for that.
Right.
But maybe some of the other things that are on my plate that day, I can kind of take a side to, I can not have to worry so much about that aren't so urgent, I think that's a really good way to put it. But I think and I keep hearing this with a lot of our guests recently, is just the self-awareness and the self-assessment and knowing where you're at and really taking that moment and time to think about that. Because I find as we're going through life, I don't think we do that probably as often as maybe we should. So.
Right. We're certainly not taught to do that.
No, absolutely not.
No, in our culture. I mean, our culture isn't really. Yeah. Or has historically not.
Yeah. All right. So our next question for you is, what is a life experience that really has played a big role in forming who you are today?
One?
Well, it doesn't have to be one. If you really need more, that's like, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire. So.
Yeah. I think that's harder because I guess for me, it's been many littler incidents that are formative. My mom was in therapy for a long time, as were many New Yorkers of a certain type in her generation. And, that obviously had an influence on directing me to be interested in people and psychology. I had an older brother who was an undergrad in social psychology, and we would have these conversations that, nudged me in that direction as well. When I think of who I am today, based on what I know from psychology research, I'm actually multiple people, right? I'm not a multiple personality disorder, but I have different sides of me, right? There's who I am as a parent. There's who I am as a psychologist. There's who I am as a spouse. There's who I am as a daughter, as a sister. And they have they're different, right? They have some similarities or things that cut across, but so that's, I'm leading with who am I as a psychologist, because that's why I'm on your show. But it's, who formed what I am today. I also, sing and play guitar, and that was really formed by being, by sort of being at a formative age in the 60s and 70s. So, and that was just hearing the music and really, singing along and wanting to do more than sing along to the radio. So it's just interesting about which part of me, from which part of me do I answer the question?
I get that. For me, it's even when I think about that question, because I have answered that question as well. But even for me, it's, well, what stage of my life are we talking about? Because I feel like, right? Because I feel like during, my husband and I were out on Sunday night, and we met a couple that we'd never met before. And he said, I can see you guys are married. We said, yeah. He asked for how long. We told him. Interesting question he asked. And I'm going to use this going forward when I meet people that have been married for a long time. He said, which decade was your best decade together? I was like, that's a really interesting, good question. And I kind of think of that in that regard to that, life event, because I can definitely look at different seasons of my life when certain things that happened made me who I am at that time. And in that way. So I understand what you're saying, because there are certain things that made me the parent who I am. There are certain things that made me the friend who I am. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right. And certainly COVID has really shaped each of us, who we will now become in different ways. I mean, a lot of people it's really led people to think much more about meaning and purpose and what's important to them outside of work, which is probably a good reset for many of us.
I think even inside of work, like I even notice, and this is for like my husband, he's got a family business. And this is happening everywhere. It's very difficult for people to find employees, because I think people are really evaluating how they want to spend their days. Like, do I really want to spend my whole day doing that anymore? I don't know. Like, absolutely.
Or working under that boss, or having that person for a colleague in my face all the time.
Right. I mean, listen, that's definitely made me change what I was doing. I was forced into it because what I was doing didn't exist when the pandemic hit. Like, it went poof. But at the same time, it was a big door opening and eye opener for me to say, oh, well, I don't have to work in that kind of situation anymore. Like, I can create a much different atmosphere. So yeah, great. Yeah.
Awesome. So to wrap things up, what is one thing that you would like our audience to take away from our time here together?
The importance of breathing. There are many apps that can help. Just look, YouTube has all kinds of things about diaphragmatic breathing. Just look up belly breathing or diaphragmatic breathing if you don't know how to do it. There are 2 apps that I recommend. One is called Calm, CALM, and the other is Breathe to Relax. And they can it's a more structured way of helping you remember, because people always look at their phones. So if you put it on your homepage, it'll remind you to just, do your diaphragmatic breathing from time to time across the day, and get in the habit of it so that you can remember to do it as a tool.
What was the second app again?
Breathe to Relax. It's also a pacer. It paces your breathing. So if I'm really, I'm anxious and I'm chest breathing really quickly, obviously I'm not going to switch on a dime into a relaxed, diaphragmatic breath. So the pacer can you can use it to match where you are and then slowly lengthen breathing, and just as a guide to help you slow down.
That's cool.
That's my answer to that question.
No, I think it's a great answer. Let's bring it back to the basics, people. Learn how to breathe better.
You ain't breathing, you ain't living.
Right. That would be my wish for people, is just to be able to have that tool and always have it available.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Rosenberg. It has been a pleasure having you on. And also want to shout out thank you to our sponsor, Alicia Botang. And thank you to our listeners, because without you, we'd just be talking to ourselves. So if you need to get a hold of Dr. Rosenberg, Allison, or myself, check out the show notes. All our contact information, social media, websites, etc. are available in the show notes. And if you like what you heard today, please like, follow, subscribe, share, get the word out there, because we've had some great wisdom passed through these shows. And did I get everything, Allison? All right. With that, I want to wish everybody a magical day.